Over the past year, Atari's mergers and acquisitions team has been working overtime. They grabbed up a dozen titles from Stern, including Berzerk and Frenzy, secured the rights to the back catalog of Mattel's M-Network games, and even nabbed the Intellivison name and much of that console's library. This is all part of their strategy to maximize their market position as the premier retro gaming publisher. And while all these acquisitions have been great for Atari fans and brought a number of our favorite games under the Atari umbrella, allowing for better access to more of our classics, there's one glaring omission. Ask anyone about their memories of Atari, and after they get done bad-mouthing E.T. for a while, they're going to mention some of their favorite games. River Raid, Kaboom, Pitfall, Megamania, all published by Activision. In this video, I'm going to walk through a what-if scenario. What if Atari were to acquire the rights to classic Activision games and IP? What would it mean for Atari? What would it mean for retro gaming fans? What would it mean for modern gaming? All that right after this.
If you're a Gen X grown-up, this YouTube channel is just the beginning. Go beyond gaming with a casual and humorous take on movies, music, TV, tech, pop culture, and more. Hear the weekly Gen X Grown-Up podcast anywhere you like to listen, or visit genxgrownup.com/pod.
Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I'm John, and I am a Gen X Grown Up. Thank you for taking the time to click on this video. You know, the titles Activision published for Atari consoles in the 80s are among some of the best and most beloved of early home video games. And why not? Activision was built by a handful of the best Atari developers who struck out on their own. Atari owners came to associate Activision with quality, and that association was well earned. On every Atari gadget I review that has a collection of Atari games on it, I can always count on plenty of commenters asking, but does it have Megamania? But does it have River Raid? Well, of course, I have to sadly inform them that it does not, and explain that it's because Atari doesn't own the rights to games published by third parties like Activision. But what if they did? What if Atari worked out a deal with Activision for the rights to those classic console games? Now, as you no doubt know, Activision is still in business and owned by Microsoft. Activision is a much larger and more powerful company than Atari, so I'm not talking about a buyout of the whole company. In my dream scenario, Atari and Activision would only need to come to an agreement to carve out the rights to those early games from the 80s. Atari doesn't need or want Tony Hawk or Call of Duty, just the classics like Star Master, Enduro, Chopper Command, and Dolphin. Ideally, in this fantasy draft of mine, Atari would secure the legal authority to redistribute those original games and, maybe more importantly, the ability to iterate on them for new releases. Okay, let's assume that my dream has come true and Atari has secured the rights to those Activision games. Now what? What does having control over those 40-some-odd games do for Atari? Well, first and foremost, their catalog of quality retro games gets a huge boost. Every Atari compilation and gaming device these days includes Centipede, Missile Command, Asteroids, and Pong, and then gets padded out with Basic Math and Tic-Tac-Toe. Now right away, the next Atari product to ship with pre-installed games can now include Pitfall, Enduro, River Raid, and Robot Tank. Not only does this make for a more attractive package to the casual consumer, but for fans and hobbyists, like us, you just made last year's product without Activision titles look like a shadow of this year's offering. Even for third parties who license Atari games for their products, this is a now more valuable library overall, meaning more revenue for Atari. Okay, now that you have those games in your library, let's talk about publishing. There are a handful of Activision titles that probably won't make this cut. Those that Activision themselves had licensed, like Double Dragon, Kung Fu Master, and Ghostbusters, but that still leaves about 40 high-demand games for Atari to work with. One of Atari's current trends is creating reissues of out-of-print cartridges. Now, I imagine those must be selling pretty well, and it's great to see reprints of Outlaw and Berzerk, but imagine the demand for a physical re-release of Pitfall 2, or Enduro, or Stampede. If Atari's seeing money from reissues of their own classic cartridges, the potential upside of selling new Activision cartridges is, again, more revenue for Atari and more access for gamers. Now, reissues and compilations are great, and in my scenario, you can surely see Activision titles being added as yet another downloadable add-on for Digital Eclipse's Atari 50, but what about expanding on those games? Atari has built quite a nice library of slightly reimagined and modernized versions of their classics like Asteroids, Breakout, Missile Command, and more. As soon as they worked out that Stern deal, Berzerk Recharged, that was released just a few months later. The simple yet elegant design of those early Activision games absolutely begged to get the Recharged treatment. Fishing Derby with hundreds of different fish and upgradable fishing poles? Or how about Megamania with expanded enemies, power-ups, and an online leaderboard? Look, I could go on, but you get the idea. Picture your favorite Activision game with updated visuals and mechanics and available to download and play on your modern console or PC. And I'm not done. Atari has also been going beyond Recharged games with new modern games inspired by and set in the universe of the original. We've already seen Haunted House, Lunar Lander Beyond and Yars Rising, and Fatal Run 2089, well, that's coming right around the corner. There is so much fertile ground to be explored here. What if Pitfall Harry were dropped into an open-world jungle to explore, find hidden secrets, and plunder treasure? What if SeaQuest were evolved to take place in an open ocean with every variety of sea creature to encounter and catalog, and giant sea monster boss fights every few levels? These are just a couple off the top of my head, and there are dozens more possibilities that could sprout from having the authority to explore our newly acquired Activision intellectual property. Now, all of this sounds pretty great, but there is a Trojan Horse hiding in an Activision acquisition. But rather than Odysseus hiding inside, it's good news. And if any of what I've described so far sounds good to you, then this is going to seal the deal. As a big, wealthy company, Activision themselves are no stranger to mergers and acquisitions. So in the late 80s, Activision secured the rights to the vast majority of the very best games from the Imagic library. That's right, Atlantis, Dragonfire, Demon Attack, Cosmic Arc, Activision holds the rights to those too. While Atari is at the table, work that into the deal. So then, take everything we just talked about with classic Activision games and apply those to your favorites from Imagic. Recharged Demon Attack, a modern continuation of the unfinished Atlantis Cosmic Arc trilogy, and all those Imagic games for Atari also available for reissue and distribution? Man, in my wildest imagination, I just cannot find a downside to Atari making Activision their top priority for their next acquisition. And further, I can't think of another choice that would even approach the potential upside of nabbing those 80s Activision classics. And look, I know we've seen these Activision games available in isolation, like in the popular Activision Anthology, but that was released over 20 years ago now. And we've never had all of these classics available under the same umbrella available for distribution. A deal like I've described would now bring all your favorites from Atari, M-Network, Stern, Imagic, and Intellivison under one roof. And, I might add, under one roof that has shown both a passion and aptitude for bringing classic games back to players in a variety of forms. Look, I don't work for Atari, but I can't imagine they haven't already considered working out a deal with Activision for their old catalog. I can only guess maybe Activision hasn't been interested, or maybe the numbers just don't make sense. But for all the reasons I've outlined here and more, I'm holding out hope for the day I fire up Atari's new Pitfall Recharged, and I swing over a lake of crocodiles on my way to explore the jungle all over again. What do you think of this possible way forward for Atari? Are there any particular Activision or Imagic games you'd like to see given the modern treatment? I guarantee you that on this topic, I cannot wait to hear from you down in the comments, so please fire away. In the meantime, as I return to a reality where all my dreams are as yet unfulfilled, I will drop links to a couple more of my recent editorials here and here. I certainly hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.